Hey, this is Matt, your host of the Vally of Shadows Paranormal Podcast. I want to do a little series from the book of Ghost of the Rio Grande Valley. The author is David Bowles. I believe he's a resident here in the valley in Brownsville, Texas. Like I said on my previous video, I want to be going over a bunch of lore and stories from my area. I've heard it's always good to start in your own backyard. This is what this channel is going to be about for now until we expand on, other stories from other people around the world. With all that being said, the first story I want to get into is called The Wraiths of the San Juan Hotel. I've personally been there with a few friends, and it was kind of a creepy vibe going on. It's a super rundown place, like it explains in the story. Yeah, it was pretty creepy. We walked in very carefully, just kind of, taking it easy, looking around, making sure there was no freaking crazy hobos or crackheads wandering around. It was pretty quiet, and I guess that's what kind of made it more eerie. We were just walking up the stairs, because I believe it's like 2 or 3 stories. I don't remember at the moment. We were in there and we were just looking around, peeking into a couple of rooms when I heard some crazy noise. I think it's probably just a pigeon or something. It freaked me out and I started running, and then they started running with me. Oh man, it was pretty embarrassing for my behalf. Oh man. But anyways, let's get into the story. The Wraiths of the San Juan Hotel. Imposing even as it slowly crumbles, the San Juan Hotel stands enigmatically at the heart of Hidalgo County. The local folks swear they have heard eldritch screams and desperate cries for help drifting from its moldy guts. More than one person has seen a frantic woman at a second-story window at night waving frenziedly. How did the hotel come to be haunted? In order to grasp the origins of its poltergeists, we need first to fully appreciate the origins of the building itself and the city that gave it birth. The history. Clustered together along Highway 83 are 3 towns that emerged together in the first decade of the 20th century. Founded on lands purchased cheaply from the aristocratic families, over time they have gradually come to be thought of as a single metropolitan entity. The Tri-City Zone, known as PSJA, Far, San Juan, and Alamo. All 3 ventures came to fruition in the year 1909. John Connolly Kelly Sr. and Henry N. Farr became co-owners of a 16,000-acre tract that fronted the river. Farr used his Louisiana and Rio Grande Canal Company to build a complex irrigation system for a sugar plantation he intended to establish. Hoping to forge a community around his partner's agricultural empire, Kelly set up the Farr Townsite Company. Though the sugarcane industry collapsed, deflating Farr's dream, the town named in its honor flourished. By the breakout of the Bandit Wars in 1915, some 600 souls lived in the community, and separate grammar schools opened for Anglo and Mexican American children. No juniors or senior high schools were built for the Spanish surnamed teenagers. However, as it was expected, they would begin to work after 6th grade at the latest. John Klausner, a former sheriff and deputy marshal who had scraped, climbed, and reputedly cheated his way to the top of the Anglo landowner class, organized the community of San Juan in 1909 as well. Though the town superficially bore the sainted title of John the Beloved Disciple, Klausner in fact named it for himself in a tongue-in-cheek play on the Spanish Catholic sites, much as was done at San Benito and San Perlita. After classes had been taught in a residence home for nearly a decade, a school building was finally erected. In 1919, the Far San Juan Alamo Independent School District was established, making the unity of the 3 towns official in the sphere of education. A few miles east of San Juan, Peter Ebenezer Blalock and George T. Hawkins had acquired 32,000 acres of land by 1908. Close to the railway, the 2 men laid out a town and constructed a depot. For a time, the community had begun to grow up around the ship pens, was called Camp Ebenezer. Blalock and Hawkins sold the land to the Alamo Land and Sugar Company, whose owners C.H. Swallow and Renfrew B. Krager moved the town to a higher ground and named it first Forum and then Swallow. Neither moniker stuck, so when the men organized a company to seek official incorporation, they christened it the Alamo Townsite Company, after the mission in San Antonio. Not long after its founding, This Tri-City zone came to be dominated by a man whose name inspired awe or hatred to this date, depending on whom you ask. Thompson Shannon, Tom Mayfield, also known as Whispering Tom. Born and raised on a farm in Gonzales County, Tom Mayfield left those rural surroundings in 1898 to trade horses for Teddy Roosevelt's Rough Riders. After that, the prospect of working the railway brought Mayfield to the Rio Grande Valley, where he met and married schoolteacher Moody Denali Edwards, and began working with John Klausner, first on his sugarcane plantation, and then as part of his secretary detail. At the time, Klausner was the sheriff of Hidalgo County, and he chose Mayfield as a deputy. When the county seat moved to Chapin from Edinburgh in 1908, a move opposed virulently in some circles. Tom was one of the armed men who escorted the mule-drawn wagons that transported county records to ensure their safe delivery. In 1914, Klausner ran for treasurer instead of sheriff, and Mayfield soon had a new boss, former Texas Ranger Anderson Yancey Baker, who had a reputation for heartless cruelty, shooting Mexican Americans dead in cold blood. This brutality was exemplified by his killing and mutilation of Ramon de la Cerda, owner of a small ranch adjoining King Ranch. Baker had been acquitted after considerable capital and legal investments by the ranch empire, but many in the Mexican-American community along the river hated and feared him. These two men would be key in sparking what has been called the Bandit Wars. In January 1915, Baker received a tip from former Stark County Sheriff Teodario Guerra that a Mexican national named Basilio Ramos had approached McAllen physician Andres Villarreal, trying to recruit him into a revolutionary movement, guided by a document known as the Plan de San Diego, which advocated the hostile retaking of the American Southwest. Tom Mayfield was sent to arrest Ramos. He found a copy of the document on him, and panic struck the heart of the land-owning class in the valley. Texas Rangers and troops from several state militias were dispatched to the area. They clamped down viciously on the Mexican-American community. Hundreds disappeared or were outright killed, often on the slightest suspicion of collusion with rebels, and unconstitutional justice was summarily dispensed via bullet or noose. There were of course incursions and guerrilla attacks by actual revolutionaries that resulted in a score of American deaths, but the common people bore the brunt of the lawmen's retaliation. Chief among those violating rights in a fervent desire to keep Mexican Americans in their place was Tom Mayfield. John Peavy, a deputy in neighboring Common County, recalled his later years that Mayfield was an animal of a man who did not bother to jail the Mexican Americans he arrested, preferring to beat them to death with his pistol if he could. Late in 1915, Tom Mayfield reported finding the dead bodies of 14 Mexican American men near Alamo City Park. No investigation was made. Mayfield and several Texas Rangers buried the bodies and did not report their resting place. Cosme Cáceres Muñoz witnessed the massacre from a distance and told everyone who would listen that a posse of lawmen had hung the men in trees on either side of the railroad track. Other residents who saw the bodies after they had been taken down said they also had been burned and shot through the head. The deputy denied the charge leveled against him, that he himself had lynched the men with the help of rogue rangers. In fact, he went to his grave, refusing to reveal what testimony he had finally given to authorities, testimony that was suppressed and never published. Right after this incident, Mayfield enlisted as a Texas Ranger for 2 years. When the armistice ended World War I, the violence subsided in the valley as well. Life in the Tri-City zone returned relative normality. With business booming, the need for lodging became acute. The San Juan Hotel was completed and opened for business in 1920. Right at the heart of John Klausner's town, San Juan's business leader hoped to make of the town a center of commerce, and they continually tweaked the unornamented style of an original hotel, adding mission revival details similar to those seen on buildings across the valley. Mayfield, losing his commission as a deputy sheriff, had gone to work as a guard for the American Oil Company at their installation in Mexico. His penchant for abusing Mexicans did not go over well, of course, and the former ranger found himself before a firing squad in 1921. He managed to escape, of course, only to have his throat cut in a cantina. The resulting damage to his trachea was what gave him his infamous nickname of Whispering Tom. Over the years, many deaths occurred at the San Juan Hotel. Oral histories of Mexican-American families in the community affirm that Mayfield, who returned to the United States and served as a deputy constable for FAR San Juan Alamo from 1938 to 1963, continued to brutalize Hispanics on the hotel grounds. Strangely enough, having lost his wife to divorce and with a reputation as a monster among the Mexican-American population of the town, Mayfield spent his last years as a resident of now haunted San Juan Hotel, where he is said to died alone in 1966 at the age of 86. Was he truly alone at the moment of his death? Legend suggests otherwise. Well, there's a little back history on the hotel, I guess, and everything that brought it to fruition. Now I guess we'll get into the legend itself on why this place is haunted and creepy. The legend. Many people came to visit Whispering Tom in his gloomy hotel room. Reporters, students, collectors of historical objects and lore. Alan Miller was different. He wanted to be the former lawman's apprentice. Apprentice? The old man hoarsely asked. The hell do you mean? You know how to deal with them, Miller explained. The shiftless, malcontents, the lesser breeds, the lower men who are ruining our country. Papists, mongrels. Tommy Mayfield looked the stranger up and down. Tall and lean, Miller stared back at him with pale eyes that glittered with intelligence and malice. Well, I don't know about all that. I keep the peace, punish the wrongdoers, send a message to the would-be criminals. Did some folks object to my message? Sure, but it was a frontier. The valley was a lawless place, still is in some spots. Take a firm hand to keep that mob under control. Miller nodded avidly. That's what I want to learn from you, sir. That firm hand. The stranger was persistent, renting a room on the same floor and visiting Mayfield regularly. Gradually, the old man warmed up to him, Miller opening up and sharing the techniques he had used to strike fear into men and women at precisely the right moment, to punish without impunity those whom the liberal law might otherwise leave be. Perhaps Whispering Tom should have realized he was talking to a sociopath. Perhaps he actually did. Whatever the case, after a month or so of these dark conversations, Alan Miller decided the time had come. The righteous calling squirmed in his breast. Eager to burst into fruition, he intended to kill a prostitute. Life was tough for Ambarina Rivera. A year earlier, her husband, Raul, had died in a far-off land of Vietnam, serving a country that did little to support the widow and her 3 children afterward. Desperate for money, in very tough economic times, Ambrina had been lured by a cousin into the sex trade. She was not proud of being a prostitute, but she was not ashamed either. It was a matter of supply and demand. Like all work, no dirtier than cleaning some gringa's house, she told herself. It paid better too. Her children ate well, wore decent clothes, and lived in a good home. She had no regrets. Take what you can from them, her mother had surprisingly said, when she had finally learned the truth. From every man you can, especially the gringos. They owe women a blood debt for what they have done to us, mija. Ambrina did not feel the same hatred as her mother, but the advice was still good. Men had their uses, of course. Protection was one. She plied her trade in San Juan's red light district, safe as a member of a stable run by Fernando Cuevas, one of the toughest criminals in the neighborhood. So she didn't worry too much. When the black Triumph saloon pulled up and the tall Anglo got out to approach her, he was polite and demure. She named the price and he agreed. We can go around the corner to a room. I rent close by, she said. I'm staying at the San Juan Hotel. Much nicer, wouldn't you say? Alright, let me just let Fernando know. Fernando urged Ambrina to squeeze her jaw for a little more cash. After they had negotiated the new price, she got into the sedan and they drove the mile or so to the hotel. His room on the second floor was spotless and nearly empty, as if he might pick up and leave at any moment. Ambrina had been hired by such men before, traveling salesmen and gamblers, unmoored fellows drifting the edge of society. Let me see the money, she said softly, as he unbuttoned her blouse. He showed her a $50 bill and turned to set it on the dresser, with a sharp tap of his fingertips. Ambrina smiled. Good. Now just come over here and relax. We're going to have... Without warning, he swung around, his arm outstretched, and Brina noticed the straight razor in his hand, just as it bit into her flesh, slashing her throat open. Silence, you brown whore, he snarled at her. Your sins have been judged. Your heart has been weighed. Now lie down and die for me. Ambrina collapsed. As her life drained out of her, all she could think of was her beautiful children, orphans now. Their little faces filled her vision as she would swirl blackly away. When Ambrina did not return, Fernando Cuevas went looking for her at the hotel. The employees remembered that Mr. Miller had gone into the room with the woman, matching her description. Then he had checked out, though no one remembered seeing his guest leaving with him. They found her in a pool of blood of her own, lifeless, on the bed. After police had questioned him thoroughly about Alan Miller, Tom Mayfield stood in his doorway, watching men from the coroner's office carry her body out on a stretcher, covered by a sheet dotted with red stains. Even as brutal a heart as his could not help be moved, just a little. Such a senseless act. He had no problems with prostitutes, especially those who knew their place. He had availed himself of their services, often over the years. What a waste. In the months that followed, Whispering Tom often thought of his apprentice, of the lessons he had learned. Thinking through such acts helped him bury them deep, where he had stifled his last vestiges of guilt years ago. Eventually he was able to put Miller and the prostitute from his mind entirely. Then the voices started to murmur in the walls around him, indistinct at first, then slowly resolved themselves into accusing voices of his past, men and women whose lives he had taken or destroyed. From in that very town, they immersed in his crimes, even the most private and hidden offenses. Their whispering voices pried at his dark soul, unearthing his shame. Tom's health deteriorated. Soon, he was essentially confined to his room, visited by nurses from time to time. That is when she appeared, the prostitute, with a parade of ghastly wraiths in tow that passed withering through his squalid quarters, looking at him with hollow, accusatory eyes. The procession loomed closer and closer with each passing day, holes gaping in their skulls, noses flapping grotesquely around constricted necks, faces battered and broken by rifle butt and pistol grip, flesh curled and crisp by the torched flames. When at last his doctors confined him against his will to a room at the San Juan hospital, the ghosts followed, drawn like flies to rotting flesh. They made their last few months of Mayfield's life a living hell. Pride kept him from complaining. He endured their harrowing presence with jaw clenched tight, unrepentant to the very end. Folks say that when his soul finally fled his failing flesh, the wraiths were waiting to drag him away to his eternal reward deep in the rotting recesses of the San Juan Hotel. Well, there you have it, guys. That is our first story from the ghost of the Rio Grande Valley. I hope you guys enjoyed that little story. Go ahead and put down in the comments, let me know what you guys think of this story. If you guys have been there, if you live here locally, perhaps send me some of your personal stories. We should have the email available in the description. I will definitely have some more stories coming from this book. For example, we got The Lonely Ghost of Layford. That one seems interesting. And The Woman in White at Roma, which that one has great significance to me because in the video, I'm not sure if it's gonna be out by the time this one comes out. We have a couple of friends on the podcast retelling some stories, and I know for sure we do talk about a woman in white, just kind of related to La Llorona. That is another legend here in South Texas, and I've known from what I was told that there is a woman in white practically all over the world, some kind of entity that's a woman in white. So that's pretty interesting. Hopefully we can get into that more. So yeah, that's it guys for this video. Go ahead and make sure to like, subscribe, and comment down below anything you feel that's important to this video. Please no trolling. If you like what we do, thank you. If you don't, there's other podcasts or YouTubers out there who cover this. So I mean, We don't need any of that garbage here. I do appreciate everyone who does come in and is interested in this. Obviously, this is just the beginning, and I hope to upgrade everything, make better videos. Everything, of course, will come with time. Again, thank you guys, and see you later.